For over 2 decades, NCIS stood as the ultimate symbol of justice and family. But behind that polished badge lay a toxic culture of fear that shattered the lives of its stars. The beloved leader was secretly a nightmare to work with, forcing one icon to flee the show in terror. As we look at them in 2026, you'll see the broken spirits and unrecognizable faces of those who barely survived the fame. David McCallum as Donald Ducky Mallard. Now we turn to David McCallum, known to millions as Donald Ducky Mallard, the wise mentor, storyteller, and almost grandfather-like presence of NCIS. He was already 70 years old when he took the role, and it gave it a second life that few actors ever experience. Ducky became the soul of the series, the calm voice in chaos, and the character that connected generations of viewers. Sadly, David McCallum passed away on September 25, 2023, at the age of 90 due to natural causes at New York Presbyterian Hospital in New York. His passing came on the exact day CBS aired a 20th anniversary NCIS marathon, a coincidence that felt almost scripted. He was cremated, and in February 2024, NCIS aired a tribute episode that honored not just the character of Ducky, but the man behind him. His estimated net worth stood at around $15 million, built over a career that spanned more than 6 decades. But his life was marked by pain long before NCIS. In 1989, his adopted son Jason died from an accidental drug overdose, a tragedy that devastated McCallum and left a lasting emotional scar. He rarely spoke publicly about it, but those close to him described it as one of the darkest periods of his life. Losing a child is something no one truly recovers from, and for McCallum, it became a quiet burden he carried for the rest of his years. And if that wasn't enough, his first marriage ended in a deeply personal betrayal. His wife, actress Jill Ireland, left him for his close friend Charles Bronson, a situation that unfolded publicly in the 1960s and shocked those around them. But instead of collapsing, McCallum rebuilt his life with Catherine Carpenter, whom he married in 1967 and stayed with for 58 years. From global fame in The Man from UNCLE to becoming the beloved face of Ducky, his story is one of endurance. Sean Murray as Timothy McGee. We move on to Sean Murray, recognized as Timothy McGee, the younger brother figure, the quiet genius, and the emotional glue of the NCIS team. At just 26 years old in 2003, he entered the story as a relatively modest presence, but that same role steadily evolved into the turning point that would eventually make him the longest-serving cast member in the show's history. In 2026, Sean Murray is 49 years old and continues to work in television while maintaining a lower public profile after more than 2 decades tied to NCIS. Following his departure as a regular, he has focused on family life and selective acting projects. With an estimated net worth of around $25 million, he has built a steady and enduring career, far removed from the instability many child actors face. But his journey wasn't as smooth as it looked. One of the most alarming moments came when fans noticed his dramatic weight loss during the mid-seasons of NCIS. So extreme that rumors spread rapidly online, with many believing he was seriously ill or even facing a life-threatening disease. The speculation grew intense, forcing Murray to publicly clarify that he had lost nearly 25 pounds due to a strict diet change, cutting out sugar and alcohol. Still, the damage was done. Those images lingered, and the fear among fans was very real. And long before that, there was another kind of pressure. The kind that follows you before you even prove yourself. As the stepson of legendary producer Donald P. Bellisario, Murray had to face constant whispers of being a nepotism hire. Every performance, every appearance was quietly judged through that lens. But over time, through consistency and restraint, he outlasted almost everyone. From his early role as Thackeray Binks in Hocus Pocus to becoming the steady heart of NCIS, Sean Murray didn't just survive the pressure, he slowly rewrote the narrative around his name. Mark Harmon as Leroy Jethro Gibbs. Now we have Mark Harmon, remembered as Leroy Jethro Gibbs, the father figure, leader, and moral anchor of NCIS. At 52 years old, he defined the show and defined his entire legacy. For nearly 2 decades, Gibbs stood at the center of the series, shaping its tone, its discipline, and the way every story unfolded. As of 2026, Mark Harmon is 75 years old and remains active behind the scenes as a producer and narrator, especially with projects like NCIS Origins. Even after stepping away from his on-screen role in 2021, his influence never truly left the franchise. With an estimated net worth of around $120 million, he stands as one of the most successful and quietly powerful figures in television history. But behind that calm authority, there were cracks the audience never saw. One of the most controversial moments came during the later seasons of NCIS, when tensions between Harmon and co-star Pauley Perrette reportedly escalated after an on-set incident involving Harmon's dog biting a crew member, which allegedly required 16 stitches. From that point on, reports claimed the two actors refused to film scenes together, ultimately leading to Perrette's exit in 2018. That kind of behind-the-scenes fracture doesn't just disappear, it changes the energy of an entire production. And yet, away from the spotlight, Harmon lived a life that almost feels like a contradiction to the rumors. Married to actress Pam Dauber since 1987, their relationship has lasted nearly 40 years, something incredibly rare in Hollywood. In 1996, he made headlines for a very different reason when he smashed a car window with a sledgehammer to rescue 2 teenagers trapped in a burning vehicle outside his home, saving their lives. From Emmy nominations for St. Elsewhere to becoming the face of NCIS, Harmon's story is not just about fame, it's about control, pressure, and the quiet weight of being the man everyone depends on. Michael Weatherly as Anthony Donoso. Next, we turn to Michael Weatherly, widely known as Anthony Donoso, the charming troublemaker, the older brother, and the unpredictable spark of NCIS. At 35 years old in 2003, he stepped into the series with natural charisma, and that role quickly grew into one of the defining forces that shaped the show's early identity and long-term success. As of 2026, Michael Weatherly is 58 years old and remains active in the industry, recently returning to the NCIS universe with NCIS, Tony and Ziva after leading the series Bull from 2016 to 2022. Despite the ups and downs, he continues to work both in front of and behind the camera. With an estimated net worth of around $45 million, his career has remained financially and professionally significant. But behind the charisma, his story took a darker turn that many fans still struggle to accept. In 2018, CBS paid a staggering $9.5 million settlement to actress Eliza Dushku after she accused Weatherly of repeated sexual harassment on the set of Bull. According to official mediation documents, he allegedly made explicit comments about spanking her, suggested a threesome, and referenced a so-called rape van. Dushku testified in 2021 that this behavior was near constant, and within days of her complaint, her role on the show was terminated. Weatherly later apologized publicly, but the damage to his reputation was already irreversible, and that wasn't the only instability in his life. Early on, his own father, a wealthy businessman, cut him off financially when he chose acting over a traditional career, forcing him to struggle through the early years alone. His first marriage ended quickly in divorce, and even his high-profile relationship with Jessica Alba collapsed just as his fame was rising. Yet somehow, he rebuilt. From Dark Angel to NCIS, and later Bull, Weatherly's story isn't just about success, it's about controversy, survival, and the cost of staying in the spotlight. Pauley Perrette as Abby Sciuto. Now we come to Pauley Perrette, known as Abby Sciuto, the eccentric sister figure, the brilliant forensic scientist, and one of the most unforgettable personalities in NCIS history. She was 34 years old in 2003 when this role didn't just make her popular, it turned her into one of the most beloved faces on American television. Today, Pauley Perrette is 57 years old and has stepped away from acting after officially retiring in 2020 following her short-lived sitcom, Broke. Despite leaving the spotlight, she remains active in charity work, activism, and writing. With an estimated net worth of around $22 million, she built a career that combined mainstream success with a strong personal identity. But her life off-screen has been far darker than anything fans saw on NCIS. Her first marriage to musician Coyote Shivers turned into a nightmare. She later obtained restraining orders, accusing him of years of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, along with stalking that continued even after their separation. Then, in 2015, she survived a terrifying attack when a homeless man assaulted her outside her Hollywood home, an incident she later described as something she barely escaped alive. And as if that wasn't enough, in September 2021, she suffered a severe stroke, revealing in 2022 that she had faced death yet again. And then came the moment that shocked fans the most: her sudden departure from NCIS in 2018. What looked like a simple exit quickly turned into something much deeper when Perrette publicly stated she was terrified of her co-star, Mark Harmon, following an on-set incident involving his dog and escalating tensions that she described as multiple physical assaults. She refused to ever return, cutting ties with the show that made her famous. From being one of the highest-rated TV personalities with a Q-score rivaling Tom Hanks to walking away entirely, Pauley Perrette's story is about survival, fear, and the price of staying too long in a place that no longer feels safe. Brian Dietzen as Jimmy Palmer. Let's talk about Brian Dietzen, remembered as Jimmy Palmer, the awkward assistant, the quiet observer, and eventually the man who had to step out of someone else's shadow. At 27 years old, his presence felt small, almost easy to overlook in a room full of stronger personalities. But over time, that same role slowly transformed into a defining path that pushed him from background figure to one of the key faces of the medical team. Today, Brian Dietzen is 49 years old and continues working in television, including writing and contributing creatively to NCIS episodes. After being promoted to a series regular in 2012, he became a central part of the show's later years, especially following major cast changes. With an estimated net worth of around $5 million, his career reflects steady growth rather than explosive fame. But behind that quiet rise, there was a moment that could have ended everything. In 2020, Dietzen suffered a stroke, an event that many actors never fully recover from, and in that same year, he underwent cardiac surgery. Two serious medical crises, back to back. For someone still actively working on a long-running series, that kind of physical toll isn't just frightening, it's career-threatening. And yet, he returned, continuing to work as if nothing had happened. And then came the pressure no one could truly prepare for. After the loss of David McCallum's presence in the autopsy room, Dietzen found himself carrying a responsibility that fans had associated with a legend for decades. He openly admitted feeling the weight of stepping into that space, knowing comparisons were inevitable. From small stage productions like Equus to becoming chief medical examiner on NCIS, Brian Dietzen's story is one of quiet endurance, the kind that proves survival isn't always dramatic. Sometimes, it's just relentless. Rocky Carroll as Leon Vance. Let's continue with Rocky Carroll, remembered as Leon Vance, the authority figure, the strategic leader, and the man who had to take control after chaos. At 45 years old in 2008, he entered the series at a moment of crisis, forced the show into a new era of control and discipline. From that point on, Vance became the figure responsible for holding everything together, both on-screen and within the story. As of 2026, Rocky Carroll is 63 years old and remains active in the industry, not only acting but also directing multiple episodes of NCIS since his directing debut in 2015. With an estimated net worth of around $4 million, his career reflects decades of steady, disciplined work rather than sudden fame. But his journey was shaped by a reality many actors never have to face. In the 1980s and early 1990s, opportunities for black actors in serious roles were extremely limited, especially in theater and network television. Carroll had to fight for roles in Shakespeare productions that were rarely offered to actors of color, working with the New York Shakespeare Festival to break those boundaries. That wasn't just career building, it was survival in an industry that didn't naturally make space for him. For years, Vance required control, restraint, and consistency over many seasons, especially after Carroll had already proven his range in projects like Chicago Hope as Dr. Keith Wilkes and the Fox series Rock, 1991 to 1994, where he played the more expressive and flawed Joey Emerson. That constant balancing act, shifting from emotionally open roles to a tightly controlled leadership figure, became an invisible burden he carried for years. And behind all of that, his personal life remained remarkably stable. Married to Gabrielle Bullock since 1996, with a daughter, maintaining a quiet family life away from scandals. From early struggles on stage to becoming one of the longest-serving leaders on NCIS, Rocky Carroll's stories about endurance, discipline, and surviving a system that was never designed to make it easy. Ralph Waite as Jackson Gibbs. Let's begin with Ralph Waite, known as Jackson Gibbs, the father, the emotional anchor behind Leroy Jethro Gibbs. At 80 years old in 2008, he appeared in the series as a direct link to Gibbs's past, using his age and presence to ground the character in family history and unresolved personal conflicts. Ralph Waite died on February 13, 2014, at the age of 85 from natural causes at his home in Palm Desert, California. He was buried at White Plains Rural Cemetery in New York. NCIS dedicated the Season 11 finale, Honor Thy Father, to him, directly writing Jackson Gibbs's death into the storyline. Over his career, he appeared in films like Cool Hand Luke, 1967, 5 Easy Pieces, 1970, and The Bodyguard, 1992, maintaining steady work across nearly 50 years. One of the most documented tragedies in his life occurred in 1964 when his daughter Sharon Waite died of leukemia at the age of 9. This loss happened while he was still building his career and had not yet reached television success, forcing him to continue working through grief during his early stage years and later projects like The Waltons and films such as 5 Easy Pieces, where he was establishing his presence in serious drama. Before reaching stability, Waite also struggled with alcoholism, a problem he later acknowledged publicly. This addiction affected both his personal relationships and professional consistency during his early years. He eventually overcame it, returned to his religious roots, and became an ordained Presbyterian minister after completing studies at Yale Divinity School. An unusual path that showed a clear shift in his life direction. Beyond acting, Waite's life included multiple personal and professional layers. He was married 3 times and had 3 daughters, while also running for U.S. Congress 3 times, 1990 and twice in 1998, losing 1 race by about 5%. He returned to active religious life in 2010 and continued acting in later roles such as Bones. His career combined television success, personal loss, addiction recovery, and political ambition into one continuous life story. Cote de Pablo as Ziva David. And now we come to Cote de Pablo, known as Ziva David, the outsider, the warrior, and the emotionally complex woman who redefined NCIS. She was just 26 years old in 2005, and her arrival brought a completely new layer of intensity and unpredictability to the series. At a time when the show needed evolution, Ziva became that turning point, reshaping both the tone of the story and the emotional depth of the team. As of 2026, Cote de Pablo is 47 years old and continues to work selectively, recently returning in NCIS, Tony and Ziva, after years of absence. She remains one of the most private figures in the industry, avoiding social media and limiting public exposure to protect her personal life. With an estimated net worth of around $6 million, her career reflects careful choices rather than constant visibility. But her life was shaped early by a difficult transition that many overlook. At just 10 years old, she left Santiago, Chile, and moved to the United States after her mother took a job in Spanish-language television. That move forced her to adapt to a completely new culture and language almost overnight. She even had to change how people addressed her, abandoning Maria Jose because classmates couldn't pronounce it, choosing Cote instead. That sense of displacement followed her for years, and her early career was far from stable. After graduating from Carnegie Mellon, she moved to New York and struggled financially, working as a waitress in a Brooklyn restaurant and taking babysitting jobs just to survive. One of her biggest early opportunities, The Mambo Kings, was expected to be her breakthrough on Broadway, but the production shut down before it could succeed. That collapse left her starting over again, at a moment when many careers either take off or disappear. Then came the decision that shocked millions. In 2013, at the peak of her fame, she walked away from NCIS. Years later, she confirmed the real reason. She was unhappy with how the writers were handling Ziva's storyline and felt the character was not being treated with the respect it deserved. That wasn't just a career move, it was a risk that could have ended everything. Add to that her deeply private nature, her refusal to engage with public pressure, and personal losses she has chosen not to publicly detail in Hollywood. Miguel Ferrer as Owen Granger. Now we come to Miguel Ferrer, known as Owen Granger, the senior authority figure and assistant director in NCIS Los Angeles. At 57 years old, he entered the role with decades of experience, bringing a controlled and authoritative presence that reinforced the show's leadership structure during its later seasons. Miguel Ferrer died on January 19, 2017, at the age of 61, from complications of throat cancer at his home in Santa Monica, California. His death occurred while he was still appearing in NCIS Los Angeles, and viewers could clearly observe changes in his voice in his final episodes. His career included films such as Traffic, 2000, and Iron Man 3, 2013, along with long-term television work in Crossing Jordan, 2001 to 2007. Ferrer was diagnosed with throat cancer during his time on NCIS Los Angeles, a disease that directly affects speech and breathing. Despite this, he continued filming, and the progression of the illness became visible on screen. His voice weakened and his delivery slowed noticeably in later appearances. This is a documented case of an actor continuing to work while physically affected by a serious illness, particularly one that impacts vocal performance. There was a time that Ferrer did not immediately pursue acting. He initially focused on music and played drums, including projects connected to musician Keith Moon, before transitioning into acting in the early 1980s. He later expanded into voice acting, with roles such as Shan Yu in Disney's Mulan, 1998, and characters in Young Justice, showing a broad range across different media. In his personal life, Ferrer was the son of Academy Award-winning actor Jose Ferrer and singer Rosemary Clooney, and the cousin of George Clooney. He was married to producer Laurie Weintraub and had 2 sons along with 2 stepchildren. His career spanned over 30 years across film, television, and voice acting, combining family legacy with a consistent body of work until his death. Jessica Walter as Judith McKnight. Next we have Jessica Walter, known as Judith McKnight, the mother figure, the manipulative presence, and a character tied to emotional tension within NCIS. At 74 years old in 2015, she appeared in the series during the later stages of her career, bringing with her decades of experience that had already been established through iconic roles in both film and television. Jessica Walter passed away on March 24, 2021, at the age of 80 in her sleep at her home in Manhattan, New York. Her death marked the end of a career that included an Emmy Award for Amy Prentice, 1975, and a Golden Globe nomination for play Misty for Me, 1971. She remained active until her final years, notably voicing Mallory Archer in Archer, 2009 to 2021, and continuing her role as Lucille Bluth in Arrested Development, 2003 to 2019. One of the most publicly documented emotional moments in her later life occurred in 2018 during a New York Times cast interview for Arrested Development. At the age of 77, Walter became visibly emotional and stated that in nearly 60 years of working, she had never had anybody yell at me like that on a set, referring to an incident involving co-star Jeffrey Tambor. This was not a minor disagreement. It became a widely reported controversy, with co-stars initially defending Tambor before later issuing public apologies. The incident highlighted the pressure she faced even after decades in the industry. Besides, Walter also experienced instability in her personal life. Her first marriage to Broadway director Ross Bowman ended in divorce in 1978 after 12 years, during which they had one daughter, Brooke, born 1972. In 1966, while still early in her marriage, a fire broke out in their 10th-floor apartment, and she had to be rescued by a firefighter. These incidents show that her life outside acting was not without real disruptions. Despite those challenges, she maintained a long-term, stable marriage with actor Ron Liebman from 1983 until his death in 2019, a relationship that lasted 36 years. Professionally, she transitioned across generations, from films like Grand Prix, 1966, and The Group, 1966, to television success with Arrested Development and voice work in Archer. Her career demonstrates continuity across nearly 6 decades, combining early film success, award recognition, and late career resurgence. So after all these years, the NCIS cast has changed in ways no one could have predicted. Some built lasting legacies, some faced unimaginable struggles, and some are no longer with us. Looking at them now in 2026, it really makes you wonder, which transformation shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this NCIS 2003 cast Then and Now 2026, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories you won't hear anywhere else.